Good morning. I'm Melissa McKay. I am the annuals greenhouse manager here at Bates Nursery. Today we are talking spring bulbs, and these are some of my favorite plants to grow, so I'm pretty excited to share these with you. A lot of people hear spring bulbs and think of what is blooming in the early spring, like your tulips and your daffodils. Those are actually considered fall bulbs, so if you want those type of blooms, you have to plant those bulbs in the fall. What we're talking about today are tender bulbs that you would plant in the spring, and then they would flower late spring into the summer. I don't want to repeat myself here. I did do a bulb webinar last year where I talked about the different types of bulbs and the way bulbs work and anatomy and such. So I will refer you to that one if you want to learn a little more about varieties of bulbs. One thing I do want to mention today is that our growing zone here in Nashville, Tennessee is Zone 7A. This means that it isn't unusual for our winters to get down to 0 degrees. Most of the bulbs I'm going to talk about today cannot handle temperatures quite that cold. A couple of exceptions to this rule are daylilies, which are hardy to zone 4, and Oriental and Asiatic lilies, which are hardy to zones 3 to 4. I'm going to start with a little bit of a bummer first. In Nashville, we can grow almost any of the spring bulbs. The trickiest ones for our area are anemone and ranunculus. They are the Goldilocks of the spring bulbs. They don't like freezing temps, so they don't like cold soil, but they also don't like heat and humidity. They have just this perfect little zone that they like to bloom in, and that's early spring. And if you've lived here long enough, you know that Nashville typically has a really short spring. We go from freezing temps to boiling hot within like 3 or 4 weeks. So it's a really short time frame for ranunculus to get going, send up their bloom stalks, and do what they're going to do before we get to the heat and humidity here. So I actually planted mine in the fall and covered them with frost cloth, and they've done okay. If you're going to spring plant ranunculus here, you actually have to do that early, like February or so. Keep them covered with frost cloth and then uncover as the temperatures warm up. So it's a little late to get your ranunculus in the ground now. But the good news is there are lots and lots of other beautiful choices of spring bulbs, and the ones I'm going to talk about today are way easier to grow than ranunculus. First up is the daylily. Daylily is probably the easiest plant to grow besides monkey grass. You can plant the tubers either in the fall or in the spring. If you're going to get flowers the same year, it's probably best to plant the bare root in the fall. But in the spring, we here at Bates have a huge selection of potted daylilies that you can just pop right into your landscape, and they should bloom this spring and summer. Daylilies are kind of divided into 2 groups. You've got the repeat bloomers, and one example of that is going to be good old Stella d'Oro here. This is a dwarf variety, and it blooms continuously all through the summer. It's a great border plant to line your beds with. The other type of daylily is going to be your June bloomers. Now, it's not June, so we didn't have any plants here in bloom to show you, but I do have a few pictures of ones that I have planted in my garden. So we can pull up picture 1. This is called Egyptian Myth. Picture number 2. Sorry if I'm going too fast. That is, and I just love this name, Jamaican Me Crazy. It's really fun. And then picture number 3 is Moses Fire. So lots of really pretty showy blooms you can get with the June bloomers. And then they only bloom for maybe a month or so, and then they're just kind of green the rest of the year. So a lot of people would consider daylilies kind of boring, but I think it's worth it just for that showy 1 month period of time, those big blooms that you get. They're called, if you didn't know, they're called daylilies because each bloom is open for just a day. But the way you keep getting blooms is it'll send up, like you see here, it'll send up a stalk with several buds on a stalk. So you keep getting blooms continually, even though each bloom only lasts a day at a time. They are ridiculously low maintenance. They laugh at our heat and humidity, so they're very drought tolerant once they're established. Next up is the Calla Lily. These plants are probably pretty familiar to most of you. Their blooms aren't particularly showy. They're more grown for their foliage, but they will bloom all summer, and the hummingbirds do like the blooms on Calla Lilies. They are sun lovers. They're considered tropical plants, so they're great for like your poolside or patio landscaping. You can also put them in some of the shorter varieties in pots if you need like a little height element in your pots. We sell them as tropicals and annuals, but I have a lot of customers that say to me, but mine come back every year. Calla lilies are hardy to zone 8. And if you have them planted close to your house, close to a sidewalk, that keeps that ground temperature a little warmer, you have like a little microclimate there, they will usually come back every spring, but don't count on it. I have had a couple of winters that have been particularly rough, and it's taken out my cannas, and I've had to replant them in the spring. Now, we sell them a couple of different ways. We do have the bare root bulb sets here. This one is Happy Cleo. And then we sell the potted plants as well. This guy has burgundy foliage, which I really love. It's a nice contrast to all the green in your garden. And this is red golden flame. And this guy is giant. I'm going to have to pull him down a little bit. This will show you the blooms here. So the blooms are quite showy, and this guy is going to get pretty tall, about 4 to 5 feet tall. All right, next up is the elephant ear. They are similar in hardiness to the Calla lilies. I'll have a lot of people say that their elephant ears come back every year. Same situation. If you've got them planted in a warm spot in your yard, they will come back year after year, but some winters are tougher than others and might take them out. We sell them bare root and as potted plants. We've got this guy here that is called Teacup, and it's just a little, the roots are in here and you would pop those up. If you've seen the giant elephant ears, those are considered alocasia. There's 2 different types of elephant ear. You've got your alocasia and your colocasia. Alocasia are the big, enormous green elephant ears, and we've got bulbs for these in the garden center. And I don't know if you can see, the little pot is down here, and then these giant leaves. So you can see that this one is going to get really big. This one I really love. It's got black leaves. This one's called Black Magic. Look how satiny that leaf is. I just love this guy. And it doesn't get very tall. It gets about 3 feet tall. So it could easily go in a container. They don't flower. Elephant ears don't flower. They just give you foliage, but they keep producing foliage all summer long up until frost. The next plant I'm going to talk about is Caladium. I love Caladiums. You get a lot of variety with those guys. They've been traditionally known as shade plants, but more sun-tolerant varieties are being bred every year, which is a lot of fun. They can be used for borders in shade gardens, but they also make great container plants. They really like warm soil, so it is best if you wait to plant these guys until your soil warms up a little bit. If you plant them too early and the soil is just wet and a little chilly, they might rot on you. So it's best to wait a little later, kind of like your tomatoes. You want to wait until the ground is good and warm to pop those guys in there. Let's see. We don't sell the Caladium bulbs bare root, but we do have a lot of plants potted up. Got a few of my favorites here. This guy is Postman Joiner. This is one of the shade varieties. That leaf is just giant and red, but the stems are chocolate or black, and it's a really striking contrast. This one is really fun. This guy is also for shade, or girl actually. It's called Fanny Munson. And I don't know if you can tell really, these leaves are really super thin, almost like tissue paper. And they're really textured. Another one for shade. Got Miss Kathleen here.
Wow, that's a long one.
Giant. But yeah, you get the pink and green here. Most caladiums are different shades of white, green, pinks, and reds. Don't have like yellows and oranges in your caladiums. We have a solid white here. This is Florida Moonlight. And light's really glowing on this guy.
Yeah, you have to probably tilt it down to get that true color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And Pink Beauty. This one's all nice and speckled. I really like that one. Caroline Wharton. This one is fun. You get kind of a little bit of everything. You get the little bit of white in there, but you get the pink and the red and the green. The stems are a nice red color. This is a shade variety. Now the rest of these are going to be good for sun. And when I say sun, I don't know that I would put these in like baking hot sun all day, but they can take at least 6 hours of sun in my experience. This guy is, or girl, again, this is White Queen. Very huge leaf there. They start out this little green here and then turn into these giant white with red veining leaves.
That's exceptional.
This is an old standby. This is Erin. Great for sun containers and just your basic white and green, but it's a nice way to brighten up the shade with that white there in the center. This is one of my favorites. This is Red Flash. And Red Flash is great for sun. Leaves are enormous. You get those cute little speckles in there, and the stems are a bright red. This is another one of my favorites. They're all my favorites. What am I talking about? This is called Gingerland. Again, it might be hard to get the coloring on this one, but there's these faint little red speckles right around the edge of the leaf there. And then white in the center and a green border. Really cute. Last up is Miss Muffet. That one's fun. Lots of little red sprinkles there. All right, so there's your caladiums. Next up, we're going to talk about Krakozmia. Now, that is a plant that we have not gotten in here yet at the nursery, so I don't have a physical example to show you. It's maybe not as well known as some of the other bulbs I've mentioned today, but they are stunning when they are in bloom. We don't sell them as the bare root plants, but we do sell the potted plants a little bit later in the spring. I've never tried growing them in containers, so I'm not sure how they would do, but they are great in the landscape. Best mixed into perennial borders. Starts blooming in midsummer, and it'll keep blooming for several weeks if you keep cutting back the spent blooms. If you will pull up pick number 4, I have a picture of my favorite variety. This is Lucifer. Bright red bloom. Red, if you can't tell, is my favorite color. Love it. It's a showstopper. It is hardy to zone 5. Hummingbirds love it. It is drought tolerant. It's deer resistant. What's not to love? So, get Krakozmia. Next is the Calla Lily. If you grow cut flowers, Calla Lilies are a must. The flowers have a sleek and modern look, making them popular in wedding florals. But don't just think of the white varieties here. You can get them in, they have been bred in several fun colors. Okay, this guy is just your traditional white. This is probably the one that everybody is familiar with. You'll see these in wedding florals quite a lot. And that variety was just called Captain White. Then you've got this guy, which is Captain Red. Look at that color. Get kind of orange into red there, a little bit really of yellow blushy in the throat. Mm-hmm. Really gorgeous. And then we have Captain Solo for any of my Star Wars fans out there. Bright yellow. That is stunning, mixed in with container plants to use as cut flowers. Love them.
Melissa, quick question. Somebody's saying, can you leave caladium bulbs in the ground, or do you have to pull and store them? Or can you?
Caladium bulbs should not be left in the ground. They are hardy only to about zone 9. So even with some of the zone 8 plants, if you mulch them really heavily, you may be able to get them to come back. Caladiums, very, very rare for them to come back. So it's best, if you want to plant them year after year, to lift the bulbs and save them in the garage. That's what I've been doing the last couple of years. Just after the frost kills off the foliage, I take the bulbs, let them dry out just a little bit, and then store them in sawdust in paper bags in my garage over the winter. And I've already planted a few of mine in pots in the garage, and they're coming up, and they're going to be gorgeous. Yeah. Let's see. The Calla. If you will pull up picture number 5.
Sure.
My favorite variety that I discovered last year of Calla Lily was Captain Beretta. I don't have a great picture of just the plant itself, but in this floral arrangement, you will see...
Oops.
The Krakozmia again.
There we go.
Yeah. In this floral arrangement, you will see those black trumpets there. That is Captain Beretta. Loved that Calla Lily last year. So dramatic and really gives you a wow factor there. With the Callas, hardy to zone 8. If you mulch them, they may be okay. That's another one of those that I lift every year and store in the garage. Next thing I'd like to talk about is tuberose. Now, I have to admit that I don't have a whole lot of experience growing tuberose, but they have the most wonderful fragrance, similar to a gardenia. They grow in full sun, but they would appreciate some afternoon shade if you have it. they are very slow to emerge and flower. So if you plant them, you should be prepared to wait 3 or 4 months before they pop up and produce some blooms for you. Not drought tolerant, so it is important to water them when we're having dry spells in the summer. They are hardy to zone 8. This is a variety that I purchased this year, and we had these in the garden center. I believe we're sold out now, but this is the Pearl. So you'll see this spike of blooms here, and it's a delicious fragrance. Now, I have saved my 3 favorite spring bulbs for last. The first up is the lily. Lilies are divided, it's a huge group of flowers, and it's divided into about 9 different categories. The 2 most well-known categories are going to be the Asiatic and the Oriental lilies. The easiest way to tell these apart is by smell. The Oriental lilies are very fragrant, and the Asiatics are not scented at all. The Asiatics are the easiest to grow, and so if you're kind of put off by the strong fragrance of Oriental lilies, I would suggest you grow the Asiatic lilies. I think you would enjoy those. We do have a couple of bare root plants. Actually, I got this somewhere else, but this would be an example of what the Asiatic lily bloom would look like. And here at Bates, we do have some of the plants. So these little bulbs have already been potted up. This little guy looks like he's just about to pop. Lots of buds on here. It's going to be a short variety. I wouldn't really recommend using this particular one as a cut flower, but it'll give you some really pretty blooms. This variety is called Tiny Ghost. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I was a little delayed there. We're getting a request to pronounce or spell out some of the varieties that you have if they're difficult to,
Okay.
to translate.
Okay.
I'm also following up on the chat over here too.
Okay. So those would be Asiatics. Oriental lilies. We had these in the garden center. Again, I think we might be sold out. Sorry. This is a rose lily blend. Really pretty double bloom there. This would be an Oriental lily. So it's got a really nice fragrance. This guy's going to get about 3 or 4 feet tall. And if you will pull up, I believe, picture number 6, there is a picture of lilies growing in my garden. So you can see that they are very tall. They're going to produce just the 1 stalk per bulb. But look at all those blooms and those buds on that 1 single stalk. So you get a lot of bang for your buck with just that one lily bulb. Obviously, they make great cut flowers, but if you want the bulbs, if you want the lilies to return year after year, you should not cut these all the way down to the ground. You want to make sure that you leave at least half to a third of the stem, because the bulb needs that energy, needs to absorb that energy to be able to bloom again next year. So leave a little something behind. Most lilies are hardy to zone 4. So yes, they will come back year after year. And they multiply. They make little baby bulbs, and you'll get a little colony of them after maybe 3 or 4 years. And you can dig them up and divide them in a few years if you so choose. Another one of my favorites is the Gladiola. I think I first fell in love with Gladiolas when I was a kid. My grandmother grew them in her garden, and I was just in awe. They're tall and gorgeous, and I just loved them. And I had my heart broken a few years trying my best to get these to grow. But I finally learned the two most important tips for gladiolas, and that is staking and succession planting. I grow gladiolas with flower netting, but you can stake them. We sell these little guys in the garden center. This would be just to hold a single stem. So you can put one of these around the neck of your gladiola, and that'll hold that guy up. If you were going to plant lots of them, you could put kind of this half hoop around. Oh, sorry, I'm far away from the mic. You could put this half hoop around, and that'll keep them nice and corralled too. Now, gladiolas are tricky to use just as a landscape plant. They have to be staked if you're going to keep them in the garden. But I use mine for cut flowers. So as soon as that top bud starts producing any color, I cut the stem and bring it inside, because the longer that stem is out there, the more chance of it getting knocked over in a storm or by a critter. So it's best to harvest those early. Succession planting, you're going to get one bloom. Oh, this is one from my garden there. So actually, it's the bottom bloom. Once the bottom bloom starts opening up, you can cut and bring that inside. And the rest of the blooms will continue to open in the vase. Really, really pretty. Succession planting. So this is a one and done plant. It's going to put the bulb is going to put up one stalk of flowers, it's going to flower, and then it's going to be done. So if you want gladiolas all summer, best thing you can do is to succession plant. That means, for example, I bought about 100 bulbs this year, and I am planning to plant them about 10 bulbs every week, starting in a couple of weeks here, and then I'm going to do this up until the end of June. That should give me flowers all the way through the summer. Okay.
Are you planting them in like a cluster or in different areas in your garden?
Well, this year I'm going to have a specific little bed for them. So I'm going to plant like 10 clusters, or 10 in a cluster at a time.
Great.
Mm-hmm. All right. Oh, and hardy to zone 8 again. I dig mine up every year, but that guy that we had a picture of, that one, I was digging up my glads and somehow forgot about him, and he just popped right up in my garden that next spring and was happy to be there. So it's not unlikely for them to come back the following spring, but just to be safe, I like to dig mine up and store them over the winter. Last but not least is the dahlia. Dahlias are quickly becoming an all-time favorite of mine, and it seems I'm not alone, because shopping every online dahlia tuber sale in winter is kind of like fighting the mob on Black Friday. I'm dahlia obsessed. I'm embarrassed to admit how many varieties I have coming in this year. They're coming in every few days now. They are available in many different shapes and sizes and colors. I could get very technical about that, but we'll be here for another 30 minutes, and I don't want to do that to you. So basically, the two categories you want to think about are the dinner plate dahlias and just the dwarf or bedding plant dahlias. We do sell the roots for dahlias. This guy here is Thomas Edison. I grew this in my garden last year, loved it, and it is a big bloom. If you can if in the corner there's a picture of a kid with the blooms kind of next to him there. You can get an idea of
almost as big as his head.
Yeah. They're huge. But you can also grow just the smaller dwarf varieties. We're just starting to bring dahlias in, so I didn't have a lot to show you yet today, but we're going to have a huge variety coming up pretty soon here at Bates. We've got this one guy. Oh, I shouldn't have gotten red because he's not showing up with my
You can hold it out to the side.
Oop.
You want to hold... Is it backwards on the camera?
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll zoom into it.
All right.
Okay. You hold where you are and step to your right. There we go.
Sorry, I'm looking at a mirror image. It's kind of tricky. But yeah, this guy is just plain red is what it says on the tag. A lot of the varieties that we sell here at Bates aren't named varieties. They're just going to be kind of generic colors.
Mary's asking, do you pinch dahlia?
You definitely do pinch dahlias. When they're probably about 4 or 5 inches exposed, you go ahead and pinch the top of that dahlia out. It is painful, but it'll benefit you in the end because you pinch that one and it's going to send out 2 stalks, and your plant's going to be a lot bushier. You'll get a lot more stems that way. Dahlias, of course, make great cut flowers. That's mainly the reason that I grow them. But these little guys here and some of the dwarf varieties look great in containers. So you can plant those in containers. They do need good drainage. They do not like our heavy clay soil here in Tennessee. So it's important to amend your soil really well when you plant them. And kind of like the caladiums, they do like that soil to be warm before you plant them. I have not started planting my dahlias yet. I will probably wait another month or so to start planting those. Probably about mid-May is when I'm going to start putting those in the ground. I lift my dahlias every year and store them in the garage. Fun thing about dahlias is that I don't know if you can tell, but this is like a clump here of tubers. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see on camera, but there's several little tubers attached to this one clump. When really all you need is just the one tuber. You can plant this one tuber and it's going to give you a beautiful plant. So in the fall, when you dig your dahlias up, this one little tuber will be a clump of dahlia tubers, and you can then divide those into more plants. So that's always fun. All right, I think that's about all that I've got. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, we just got a question from Lois. Are there any elephant ears that will grow in a container on a covered porch or a shadier environment?
Yes, most of the dwarf varieties, like this little guy here that I had, the Black Magic, that one gets 3 feet tall. It'll be fine in the shade. It's probably not going to get quite this black if it's in shade. It likes a little bit of sun to get that dark color. But we've also got this guy. This is Hawaiian Punch. Nice green leaves, red stems. This would be just perfect in a container on a shaded porch. It's not going to get that big. I think about 2 or 3 feet tall. Yeah, 2 or 3 feet tall.
Alice is asking, planting a cutting garden, what's needed for fillers?
Well, actually, I like using Caladium and elephant ear as some of my foliage plants. You wouldn't normally think of these, but I used them last year and they have a really good vase life. They last probably about a week in a vase. So that's great. If other than that, you might want to think herbs. Herbs are great. Basils, mint, dill, fennel. And then there's perennials like rue, lavender, rosemary. Those are usually my go-tos for filler for cutting garden.
And you also did a webinar on cut flower garden,
I
right?
did, yes. Last May, I believe, I did a webinar on cut flower gardens. So check that out maybe, and you'll get a few ideas there. Like I said, spring bulbs are some of my favorite plants. They're pretty easy if you're a new gardener give those a try. It's an easy way to add color to containers and landscapes and cutting gardens. So I hope I have inspired you to try some out on your own. Feel free to come out here to Bates and talk to me in the greenhouse or any of our lovely crew out there in the greenhouse or perennials. We can give you some more details and help you decide which bulbs might be best for your situation.